أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وقال الله تعالى بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل بدعة ضلالة. This is the lecture or sermon number 6 about the leadership of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, mostly based upon a book written by Professor Joel Hayward of the same name. So the chapter is titled Common Touch. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a very common touch with the people that he lived among. No doubt he was an extraordinary human being, perhaps the most extraordinary of all times. But he chose to live like an ordinary man. Quran describes it very aptly. Ana basharun mithlukum yuha ilayya. I am a human being, just like you all are. With the exception that I get divine inspiration. I am divinely inspired. But as a human being, I'm like anybody else. And he showed it. He undoubtedly had the common touch, which means the ability to relate and appeal to ordinary people from all walks of life. And this was central to his appeal as a leader. And this also tells us that this is the reason why he is an ideal for all mankind to follow. People wanted to follow him because of the rapport they felt with him. They knew he was different, of course. He was a prophet and a leader with scrupulously righteous conduct. But he never adopted an air of superiority and seemed in many ways to be a normal man with ordinary interests, who smiled, who cried, who liked and disliked. Many of the same things that everyone else does. Now, if we go through the history of prophets, you know, many prophets had different kind of occupations. And we also have the history of Dawud alayhi salatu wasalam and Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam being the kings. And Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam also raised to the level of being a monarch. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam was given a choice. And I will read the hadith first, which comes from Abu Huraira radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. It's a Sahih hadith. It's from Musnad Imam Ahmad. قال جلس جبريل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فنظر إلى السماء فإذا ملك ينزل فقال جبريل إن هذا الملك ما نزل منذ يوم خلق قبل الساعة فلما نزل قال يا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم أرسلني إليك ربك قال فملكا نبيا يجعلك أو عبدا رسولا فقال جبريل تواضع لربك يا محمد قال بل عبدا رسولا. Angel Jibril was sitting with the Prophet ﷺ and he looked towards the sky and an angel descended. Jibril ﷺ said, verily this angel has never come down since the day he was created. The angel said, O Muhammad ﷺ, your Rabb has sent me to you with the offer. Two offers were given to him. That I make you a prophet king or a servant messenger. And Jibril ﷺ said, be humble before your Rabb, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, rather I will be a servant messenger. And it is, you read his history, his seerah throughout his career, he actually acted just like this. Even when Aisha radiallahu ta'ala asked him that, why, your sins have already been, your mistakes have been forgiven, why did you keep standing in prayer so that your legs become swollen? And he said, shouldn't I become abdan shakura? Shouldn't I become the most appreciative servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So he was on the street as he was at his home as well. He did not enjoy any special privileges. He didn't live in a palace. He did not have any security guards. And he did not have any perks. And I will talk about that in the second part of the khutbah. The perks that our former presidents enjoy at public taxpayers' expense. We'll come to that. And nothing is illegal, by the way, in America. So the examples of his activities, his community involvement, where he spent time in organizing and participating in several activities. And this is the side of the Prophet ﷺ, which usually is not taught to us in our schools as I was learning in Pakistan. So one is wrestling. The Prophet ﷺ was a very accomplished wrestler of his time. But there is a beautiful story about that in which he used his ability to achieve something way greater than winning an honor of beating the greatest or the strongest wrestler of his time. The story is from Abbas radiallahu ta'ala, it's a same story, that Anna Yazid bin Rukana was considered to be the strongest wrestler of Quraysh. And when I was reading it, his lineage goes back to Abdul Munaf. So he was a distant relative of the Prophet ﷺ as well. The Prophet ﷺ had offered him to become a Muslim several times, and he wouldn't accept it. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what would take it to make you accept the message of Islam? And he said that he might, if he could, be sure of the truth of Muhammad ﷺ's message. Now everybody has their own way of thinking and their way of determining if a person is speaking the truth or not. For a wrestler, it was that nobody can beat me. If he's truly a prophet, he would beat me. If he beats me, then it means he's true. Okay, that was his logic. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him that would he accept the message if Prophet ﷺ could throw him to the ground. Now Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu mentioned, Anna Yazid bin Rukana Sara Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam fasara'ahu Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam thalatha marrat kulla marratin ala miyati min al-ghanam. So they had a wrestling duel 3 times, and each time the wager was 100 sheep. Whoever wins will get 100 sheep. Falamma kana fi thalitha, the Prophet ﷺ threw him down 3 times. On the 3rd time he said, Ya Muhammad, ma wada'a dhahri ila al-ardi ahadun qablak. No one had ever put my back on the ground even once before you. You have done it 3 times. وَمَا كَانَ أَحَدٌ أَبْغَضُ إِلَيَّ مِنْكَ. And there was a time when I hated you, ma'azallah, he said. وَأَنَا أَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّكَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ. For him this was the moment of truth. Whatever his logic was, he saw that this was true. Just like if you look at the story of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, the magicians accepted the message because they saw that their own magic had nothing compared with what Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was able to demonstrate. So it was a demonstrative proof. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? He had achieved his objective. At the same time, he has 300 sheep, but he gave it all back to him. There is a message in it that if he wanted it for his own personal benefit, he would not have written the sheep. We also know that the Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith by Abu Hurairah, narrated by Abu Hurairah, mentioned, Anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam qala, "Laysa ash-shadidu bis-sur'a, innama ash-shadidu alladhi yamliku nafsahu inda al-ghadab." That a strong person is not the one who is able to overcome people by his strength in wrestling or other way, but the strong is the one who controls himself while in anger. The greatest strength lies in that. So the lesson that we can learn from this incident is that it shows the human side of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used a skill to bring Rukana to Islam through his own tactics. Wrestling is from Sunnah, and it is a means of strengthening the body. The same can apply to any type of exercises, sports activities, and other things that Muslims should engage in for physical well-being. In fact, Umar radiallahu ta'ala used to encourage people, he would tell people, teach your children archery and swimming. So again, these are the things that are not usually taught in our schools. Next is camel and horse races. And if you read the Kitabul Jihad in different books of Ahadith, there are many stories in which the Prophet ﷺ enjoyed horse and camel racing. Not only that, he arranged public races, and sometimes he rewarded the winners out of his own money. That's something that I didn't know before. So we come to one hadith which is from Bukhari. And it comes from Abdullah bin Umar anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sabaqa bain al-khayl allati uzmirat min al-hafiya wa amduha taniyatul wada. Most people would know what taniyatul wada is. Tala al-badru alayna min saniyatul wada. It's for the place in Medina, outside of Medina. Wa sabaqa bain al-khayl allati lam tudbin min taniyatil wada ila masjid Bani Zurat. Wa na Abdullah bin Umar kana fi man sabaqa biha. So Abdullah bin Umar radiyallahu ta'ala mentioned that the Prophet ordered a horse race. He arranged for it. And there were two types of horses, the trained horses and the untrained horses. So the trained horses ran from a place called Al-Hafiya to Taniyat al-Wada, and the horses which were not trained were to run from Al-Taniya to the masjid, which means he had the capacity to understand the limitation of the horses too, which horse can run to which place. So he actually divided them into two categories, trained horses and untrained horses. It tells you the mindset, it tells you the capacity to understand all of these things and to be into it. And Abdullah bin Umar actually participated in the race, and Professor Hayward mentioned that in some of those races the Prophet actually awarded the winner from his own money. But now let's look at another hadith which sets the Prophet apart from anybody else. Now try to imagine that there is a leader, for example, Biden, Trump, Clinton, or whatever it is. If they come with a sports car and they say, let us race, nobody would want to meet the president, to win over the president. It's just people's habit. But here is the Prophet ﷺ. He had a camel and his name was Al-Adba, La Tusbaku. Adba was a very fast riding camel and no other camel could beat her in a race. But then one day, Faja'a Arabi ala Qawudin Fasabaka. An Arabi came on a camel called Qawud. Arabic is a strange language. It's a wonderful language too. Some things were very common and there were multiple words in Arabic to describe that thing. For example, sword, camel. When I read somewhere that there are hundreds of words in Arabic to describe different kinds of swords and different kinds of camels. And actually if you read Saba Mu'allaqat, the 7 hanging odes, they all talk about different kinds of camels with different names. So Qawud, as far as I read, is a camel which is younger than 6 years old. The Arabs will know it better, I don't know much. So that camel was able to beat the Prophet ﷺ on camel. And obviously people didn't take it easy. So فَشَّقَ ذَلِكَ عَلَى الْمُسْلِمِينَ حَتَّى عَرَفَهُ. The Prophet ﷺ could read their body language. He could read the expressions on their faces. That he knew that they were hurting. And he took that opportunity to teach a golden lesson that all of us need to learn. He said, حَقٌّ عَلَى اللَّهِ أَلَّا يَرْتَفِعَ شَيْءٌ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا وَدَعَهُ. Which means what goes up will come down. That it is Allah's law that everything that goes up will come down. And we see this lesson every time, all the time, without learning from it, that corporations that are considered too big to fall, do fall down. Enron fell down. Huge corporation. Polaroid fell down. We don't know about any of the other corporations now, but be careful. It's the law of the nature. Everything that goes up will go down. So when you are at the top, don't think that you are unassailable or you will never go down. Be humble before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the message that Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam said, be humble before your Rabb, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He knew the Prophet was humble. So he took another lesson, we take another lesson that an ordinary world leader and his follower would never allow such a thing to happen. If someone excelled them, that person would be in big trouble. But the Prophet ﷺ took every opportunity to take these things as only he could, to teach a lesson and to teach wisdom to the people. The next is about archery. And while I reviewing this topic, I actually came across about 40 hadiths in which the Prophet ﷺ encouraged the people to practice and to learn archery. I will only give a couple of them here, again coming from authentic hadiths. So Uqba bin Amr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said that I heard the Prophet ﷺ say while he was delivering a sermon from the pulpit member. It's a lesson for me as well as people who give khutbahs, that when we are giving the khutbahs, it's not just everything about religion. We should be addressing the current situation too and give some advice. So if you read the wording of this khutbah tells me that this must have happened at a time when Muslims were under attack. And the Prophet ﷺ took that opportunity in his khutbah to teach them a lesson. So he said, prepare to meet them, the enemy, with as much strength as you can afford. Verily strength lies in archery, verily strength lies in archery, verily strength lies in archery. So actually he was giving them a war strategy as well. That the enemy will be coming and your best defense may be archery. That you'll be shooting arrows at them. So prepare, practice, and be expert in it. In another hadith, the Prophet said, lands will be thrown open to you, and Allah will suffice you against their evil. But none of you should give up sporting with its arrows, and you shall know. And actually, after the Prophet ﷺ had left this world, we know during different battles, especially with Khalid bin Walid radiallahu ta'ala, Muslim archers did a lot of damage to the enemy. The Prophet ﷺ intuitively knew that his best hope for building an effective leader-follower relationship, I'm just quoting it, with others was to create an egalitarian society in which everyone would benefit from the growing prosperity of his polity and in which they all saw him among them and had access to them. There are three things which have been highlighted over here. One is that if you look at it, the stock market went up by 23% last year. But do you think that a common person saw his worth going up by 23%? Or even the salary went by 23%? I have not received an increase in my salary for the last 2 years because of some financial issues that my hospital has. The gulf between the haves and the have-nots keeps widening every year. The billionaires have become multi-billionaires now, more than $200 billion and so forth, while the poor have continued to become poorer and poorer and poorer. A country may prosper, a country may become higher, superior, whatever way. It doesn't necessarily translate into an improvement in the standard of living for everyone. And the Prophet ﷺ, being a social reformer, saw to it that although there will always be a little bit of a gulf between those who are rich and those who are not rich, but he tried to bridge that gap as much as he could through zakat, through sadaqah, even through sharing his own share in the war, which I will come to that. The second thing was that he was among the people. He was not isolated from them. And the third thing was that everybody had easy access to the Prophet ﷺ. Nobody needed to have an appointment with him. When I was actually a medical student and subsequently doctor, we couldn't meet our professors. There was a peon outside and you had no access to your own teacher to ask him anything. But here you have the Prophet of Allah. Open access to everybody. And rapport meant a lot to him. He greeted everyone who passed in the streets, even any children who were playing. And he was known to make time for everyone, including or perhaps especially the poor and powerless. And one story which is mentioned is that once a woman who suffered from mental issues called out to him across the street. So here you have the Prophet, she's on the street and she calls out to him. It's possible when I read this story that this woman may have had some hearing problem. It's possible. So the Prophet replied very softly to her and he said, Mother, he addresses her as mother. Tell me on which side of the street you would prefer me to speak with you so that I can do what is best for you. He doesn't know whether she can hear better from this ear or that ear, from this side or that side. But he knew that there was some issue with that. Instead of shouting at her from the other side of the street, he speaks softly. And I've known it when I see my patients, some of them are hard of hearing. If you shout at them, they don't really hear very well. But you speak slowly and softly, they can actually understand. They can even read your lips. So he demonstrated that ability that instead of shouting back at her, he would speak softly and ask her, what would make you more comfortable and easier for you to hear me? Superb. The next part is that he liked courtesy, he liked good manners, but he hated formality, hierarchy, and to be treated differently from anybody. He didn't want people to kiss him, to touch, to fall down on his feet or anything. And recently actually an incident happened in Makkah. I went as a part of a group to perform Umrah. And that group had gone the year before, a few months before. The group was led by a sheikh. So everybody is their murid, you can say. So it actually happened. In Kaaba, when the sheikh came, all of his followers stood up and started greeting him. The shurta, the police came right away and dispersed them all. So this time when I went for Umrah with them, they said, please do not do this, do not stand up for the Shaykh, do not touch him, do not kiss him, don't do anything. But the Prophet already told us that lesson. So now, some of the companions, including Umar radiallahu anhu, suggested that no, there are some special occasions like Eid occasion. There are delegates that come to meet with you. You should dress in a more formal way. So the hadith is, أَخَذَ عُمَرُ جُبَّةٌ مِنْ إِسْتَبْرَقٍ تُبَاعُ فِي السُّوقِ فأخذها فأتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اتَّيْ هذه تجمل بها للعيد والوفود. Said, O Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, take this piece of cloth, very nice cloth, I bought it for you, silk and so forth, and you should beautify yourself by wearing it on the days, on the occasion of Eid and when people come to greet you, to meet with you. فقال له رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إنما هذه لباس من لا خلق له. That this dress is for people who do not have any share in the hereafter. Now, it's not haram. It was not haram for him to. But it was a lesson to teach people that a leader should not be respected because of the quality of dress that he wears, but the inherent quality that he has. There's a lot to discuss, so I'll just cut the story short. But I want to address the people about the repairs that has been taking place over the roof. So first of all, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I'd like to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we were able to take this task. It cost a lot of money, it cost a lot of effort. I also like to recognize Brother Rafa and Khalid Saduzai and Khalid Saduzai. They have been spearheading this project. May Allah reward them and their families as well. The President of SAAW has sent several emails to the people requesting their support for this project, but so far we have not received much support. There are obviously a few people who have contributed. Lord, may Allah reward them. So I request everybody that please support this project. We still have other repairs to be done in this masjid. We need your support. The people who are working outside also have to park inside. So once we finish the prayers, please go out and remove your cars out of the parking area, or if you are blocking any of the areas where the cars are parked. May Allah reward you for that. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. So the Quran in Surah Al-Anfal actually appropriated or assigned the Prophet 20% humus from the war booty. The Arab chiefs of that time used to take 25%. Even if they themselves did not participate in it. The Prophet participated. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assigned him 20% of khums, which is called khums, 1/5, for his expenses, for his family expenses, because he had no other job, and also to support other people. And we know from the history that the Prophet used actually most of it to give out to other people. There is a very long hadith in Sahih Muslim in which Umar radiallahu anhu said something. It's a relevant part that I'm telling you. He was talking to other Sahaba and he said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam distributed among you the properties abandoned by Banu Nadir. So Banu Nadir, we know the story. They left and their properties were given to Muslims. The Prophet got 20% of that. He didn't keep it for himself. He gave away to people. And the Umar radiallahu anhu said, by Allah, he never preferred himself over you and never appropriated anything to your exclusion. Which means he did not enjoy any parts. Now I want to give you some example, and the example that I'm giving you is in public domain. You can verify it. And what I'm saying, nothing is illegal. We Americans are very smart at making a system that rewards people without being illegal in a way. And most of the perks that our former presidents get comes after they have ended their term of office. Okay? So let's look at some examples. So in December of 2007, Money magazine reported that the upcoming president or presidential candidate Obama's net worth was 1.3 million, 2007, end of 2007. After he served 2 terms between 2009 and 2017, his net worth increased to $70 million from 1.3 million. $70 million while he was serving as the president. Bill Clinton's worth was also reported as 1.3 million in 1992. When he finished his second term, his accumulated wealth was $120 million. Okay? Most of it comes from giving talks, writing books which are sold by millions. The most recent figure that I have, and again you can verify it, former President Barack Obama charges $400,000 a year to give a 1-hour speech. Majority of American doctors, engineers, dentists, nurses, policemen, teachers, professors do not earn $4,000 a year. And President Obama charges $400,000 for an hour speech. Probably gives one or two speeches every week. It's all legal. Hillary Clinton in 2016, I didn't find anything recent, charged $225,000 to give a 1-hour speech. Bill Clinton charged $260,000 for a 1-hour speech. Okay, all legal. But we know during the time of Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, a governor was given some gifts, and Umar radiallahu ta'ala told him, give it back to the public treasury. It's a gift for me. And he said, if you were not the governor, would you get this gift? Now what happens to the other former presidents from taxpayers' money? Again, it's not illegal, I'm not saying this thing. So Jimmy Carter passed away very recently at the age of 100. He served for 4 years. His salary at that time was $200,000, and he was given $50,000 per year for other expenses. After he finished his terms and all that, last year he received $551,000 from taxpayers' money, which includes $236,000 pension benefits, $118,000 for office space. 100 years old, was he working in an office? I don't know that. And $173,000 for contracted personal compensation and benefits. The average pension of former presidents is $222,000. Bill Clinton and George Bush Jr. received $1.3 million each for fiscal year 2024 from taxpayers' money, which includes their pension of $220,000 something, other benefits, $542,000 for office space, $124,000 for communications and utilities, and tens of thousands more for other costs. He's probably 80 years old. I don't know if he goes to office or not, but anyway. So the idea that I'm trying to convey is that the simple lifestyle of the Prophet ﷺ is incomparable. We cannot change the world, we can change ourselves. Whether you are a millionaire or a billionaire or a common man, be humble to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever goes up will come down. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep all of us safe. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us good livelihood, halal livelihood. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prevent us from takabbur and arrogance. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to educate our children so that they follow in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them the leaders of the mankind. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help Muslims everywhere in the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala end the war in Gaza. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let people of Syria and Lebanon enjoy freedom after so much horrible things that have happened to them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our brothers and sisters in Gaza, Pakistan, Kashmir, everywhere. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us under His protection. Inna Allah ya'muru bil 'adli wal ihsani wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'idukum la'allakum tadhakkarun wa aqimus salah.